Yeah.
And kind of ups your chances, I feel like. Statistically, they're likely to lose.
Statistically, what?
Statistically, the opposing team is likely to lose, so you're more likely to win. That's how that works, right?
Why is the opposing team more likely to lose? I don't understand.
It's science.
It's a 50-50.
It's not really
science. You can't just
science.
say science and make it true.
Yes, I can. It's how it works. Here we go, guys. Coast loading into the game on the blue team. Zion Spartan is going to be top lane Yasuo here. Nintendo jungling the Elise. And Shifters that mid lane Kale. Watching Dignitas walk their way out. Yep, Jungle Wukong, you called that one right, Crumbs. Gonna have a fun time dashing around here. Here we go. People walking up to the river. Haven't seen this before.
Okay, so very early on in the game, Dignitas has to be careful not to lose control of everything, in a sense. Early on in the game, while Karthus can shove, he is vulnerable to Kale fighting. Also, Yasuo is an extremely strong level 1 and 2 laner, meaning that Zion Spartan can push Cruiser the Bruiser in the top lane. And the biggest thing they have to worry about is that Wukong's early jungle is mainly just about survival, and Elise is an extremely strong counter jungler. So combined, Coast has the potential of pushing in both of their solo lanes and then going and trying to kill or disrupt Crumbs' jungle. If that happens, it's going to be very difficult for Dignitas to pull off any sort of game plan because they have a very open early game vulnerability that I think Coast is going to try and exploit.
All right, guys, let's track Nintendo's progress and the solo lanes then. It's a 2-on-2, of course. Dignitas got their first pick on that one. We probably expect Dignitas to have a better time there in the bottom side. Zion Spartan, an aggressive ward up in the upper tri-brush. Nintendo going to be starting, looks like, his own blue buff here with help from Zion. So Coast sending their dual lane down bottom early to get the first shove. And actually, Dignitas looking for a lane swap here.
Lane swapping isn't that bad of an idea here. What this also allows them to do is defend Crumbs' red buff if they want to. Because now it's not about getting the soul. They only lose the one solo lane in the mid, and Skara can still peel back a little bit for a support, and they will most likely outnumber if they decide to go for an invade. So a good positioning early on in the game by Dignitas, and it's going to make it much harder, if not impossible, for Nintendo decks to disrupt Crumbs' early jungle.
And a random thought here as well as we look at how these guys are doing things. Zion Spartan went back into the jungle to go share experience and gold with Nintendo, seeing that it was a 2v1 lane. Nintendo also started Q on Elise, which I haven't ever seen from a jungle Elise.
You usually see W.
Yeah, and I trust him on it. Maybe it was a misclick, but I'm surprised to see that. Nintendo, though, back to his own devices here, starting his own red. And we might see these junglers go for these standard 3-on-1 plays.
There's going to be, I think there's going to be a little bit of lane pushing. If we see more of it, it's probably from Coast, because Elise can offer the ranged pushing. And what we're also seeing is we're seeing the top laners double team the jungle a little bit with their friends here. It's mainly because this is just what teams have to do nowadays. Since teams have gotten so good at 3-man diving or 3-man pushing, there's not even really a point of sticking around and doing it.
Oh,
maybe.
Man, look at this from Coast, though. They've sent everyone to the bottom side of the map. Is this really a 4-on-1 dive?
It would be. I mean, Zion Spartan's level 1, though, so he'd really just be there to watch. There's no way Cruiser is going to let that happen. It was a good ward he had over in the tri-brush, and this just means it's going to be a fast push by both teams. I wonder how deep Coach is going to try and go with this, or if they're going to try and get a dragon shortly after. They ran out of minions, though.
Yeah, well, Dignitas have their 3-man dive here in the top lane. Cutie Pie about to hit level 3. You're going to see this dual lane hit basically 3, 3, and 3 on all these guys right there. Minions dying on this side of the map. It looks like Coast will just barely get the turret first, but these guys are trading turrets so far. But Cruiser level 3 to Zion's 2. I gotta say, that's a bit of a lead for Dignitas at the very least.
Yeah, very, very minor. It's hard to tell early on in these lane swap games. Now it's since Dignitas swapped top, this is Coast's way of trying to get something back in the bottom. But we've seen multiple trades here. Wild Turtle was talking about it as well. How beneficial is a super early dragon, which is worth diminished gold from the last season, versus some damage on the second turret? Dignitas is going for the second turret, whereas Coast is just going for the dragon, and they're going to get it for sure.
Yeah, Daydream doing a nice job of dancing the dragon aggro, and there we go. Dragon goes down. Kill credit goes over to his Fusion for 25 bonus gold right here. But Dignitas are staying in that lane. Half HP on this turret. And I believe, the second tier turrets don't get that bonus armor that you get for the first few minutes of the game.
No, it's just the outer turrets.
Yeah.
This is also the last patch in which the top and middle turrets won't have just almost a super Doran shield of sorts, 20 damage reduction from champion auto attacks. The bottom lane will not have that, so it's going to be more of a choice for teams. I actually do like the change, even though it's come under a lot of criticism from some sources.
Yeah.
I know a lot of the Korean fans actually like the change.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to be much more interesting, seeing that there's more of a cost for Dignitas there, because really what just happened there is, even though they were the two-man top lane, they actually got more out of it because Coast tried to do the counter and take the dragon.
Yep.
Coast wasn't able to push a second turret. What they theoretically should have done to stay even is just continue pushing, and we would have seen 2 turrets for 2.
So the game accelerating a little bit. A lot of structures dead. No champions just yet. And we're seeing Dignitas make a rotation to the mid lane here. QtPie joining Skara, who actually, to be fair, Skara's done a very good job in this lane that we thought might have been scary. Junglers were tied up doing other things, and Skara's got a minion kill lead over Shifter. And the push now to the mid lane using Jinx. QtPie not going back to base just yet either, and the Flame Chompers as well helping to push Shifter back. So,
well, Shifter went over to help the top lane a little bit, and look out Nintendo, backing in a bad spot.
Stunned and ignited. He's going to be going down unless he can get to the Lantern, and he cannot. First blood picked up there for Kiwi Kid, and his tango partner was actually Wukong there. I feel like QtPie might be jealous.
Yeah, that was a smart roam by Dignitas right there. The expected move was for them to go all the way to the bottom lane and start pushing. Instead, they roamed and found some kills in the mid lane. So very smart tactical maneuvering there by Dignitas.
And it's going to give them a bit of a kill lead, 1-0, and of course the gold as well in their favor here. And they're actually just staying in this mid lane. QtPie just now making his way across the map. Neither AD carry actually having spent time to buy. So they're sitting on no real items, but WizFusion has been sitting there killing minions for the entire time. He's at 50 so far. He's got to be rich.
He's freezing the lane right now, which has cost his team a little bit in map pressure, but has individually helped him. That's the trade-off. You can see why Dignitas, I'm a QtPie's CS is so low. It's because he was pushing 2 turrets with his team, where they were just pushing the minion wave down as quickly as possible and not caring about CS. And then because he generated the kill in the mid lane. We'll see which one is more effective. I'd like to think that I'm a QtPie's has been, but now they're going to go into a lane, and once WizFusion shops, they're going to have to deal with a bit of a gold discrepancy.
Yeah, temporarily, QtPie is going to be the better one off here. Has boots and a Vamp Scepter against gold in pockets, which doesn't have any combat stats, unfortunately, for Coast here. His mid laners still kind of trading apart. They have bought some items, though, so Scar with the sustain. And there's a giant wave here at the top turret. Well, Nintendo and Zion Spartan pressure Cruiser here. He's not level 6, but he's got an Annie, I should say, right behind him.
Yeah, Kiwi Kid's doing his own thing this game. He hasn't necessarily been near I'm a QtPie. They're hoping that Coast dives. He's waiting just outside of the fog of war. I don't think Coast is taking the bait, though.
Not going to go for it whatsoever. Knock up on a Cruiser. Not a huge deal right there in Dignitas.
He took the cannon minion.
What a jerk.
Cheeky little Kiwi Kid. Not for you.
You're not a top laner anymore, Kiwi Kid. That's not yours.
It's true.
You're a support. You don't get gold.
He has the Doran's Ring as well as the Sightstone. I mean, he kind of took that kill gold and is trying to turn it into some offensive itemization. Still no gold per 10 item on him. I'm a little surprised by that. I would think that he would go for a bit more gold.
There's a few players who go that way. I want to say Crepo doesn't buy.
Well, Crepo definitely doesn't, but especially with a kill. I always loved back when Philosopher's Stone and Heart of Gold were a thing, for those of you that remember the good old days.
R.I.P. and Peace, Heart of Gold.
Yeah. Every time I get a couple kills on a jungler, I'd want to build them as quickly as possible. Because the sooner you can start investing in the gold per 10 items, the more valuable they become. They're kind of a snowball item of sorts in that sense. But instead, Kiwi Kid went for immediate damage. He opted against the economic investment strategy, and he's going for immediate gratification.
So, going for the ward output. Why the heck not? Let's see what he goes for this one. So far, Dignitas actually on a bit of a freeze themselves in the bottom lane. We'll see if QtPie can catch up in minion kills here, because WizFusion now with a BF sword in his inventory and a dragon in about a minute and a half. There's potentially room here for Coast to make a play off of that. The Stinger here for Shifter as well. He's sitting in the mid lane farming. We're at a bit of a lull as we wait for the teams to regroup for something.
Yeah, Coast will have the exact timer on the next dragon, but they also don't have the teleport down that they would want. Luckily for them, if Zion Spartan decides to roam down for that next dragon, it's not like he's going to be leaving a turret to Dr. Mundo's devices, because they've lost every turret in that lane. I would expect Coast to try and group down for this dragon and fight Dignitas head on.
45 seconds right now. Zion jumping over the wall for the white camp here. is still getting the farm. He's basically in farm mode. Zion Spartan just wants money. Coast shows back up in the bottom lane with still a 20-something minion kill lead with the wave pushing in towards their turret. Skara on the roam down as well. They look like they want to get ready for this one.
This is going to be a really crucial point in the game for Dignitas because I think their team fight is really strong, and they have the potential to control the dragon, especially with that skill down.
Pretty much everything missed there. Crumbs shows up. There's the Requiem as well, but it's not going to land on much. Nintendude dodges every single second of the Cyclone, but still has nowhere to go. Lantern's not going to save him either. Nice try by Daydreamin', and the chase is on. Flame Charmers, they land just barely on Daydreamin'. Tibbers shows up to the party as well. Double kill here for I'm a Cutie Pie, 3-0, and they're not even done. Crumb's going to dive the turret as well. The rocket comes through, and look at that one, 3-0 instead.
Huge moves for Dignitas right there. Coast was actually trying to set up a team fight so that they could get the dragon, but Dignitas was one step ahead of the game, and they turned it around with a counter gank pretty much of their own. They have the stronger team fight. Look at all the AoE spells they were able to use in that, and Scar was able to participate even though he was in the mid lane. Just take a look at this one more time. With the Chain of Corruption missing, it was just an easy start for Coast. They have 3.5 people. Even though Nintendo Dex kind of escaped the Cyclone, he went in the wrong direction and couldn't quite make it since I'm a Cutie Pie got excited from the Jinx passive. They could just completely chase him down. That's the unnerfed arm time on the Flame Chompers, catching the Thresh and gives them the kills they needed.
Well played overall, and even to save him the ultimate too. I like the patience by Cutie Pie to know that he was going to kill these champions and saving the ulti for when he needed it. But interestingly enough, Coast are actually the guys who get control over Dragon. Dig invested in the turret kills and a recall instead.
Yeah, Dig opted for the turrets, gave the Dragon to Coast. We'll see how that pans out. Considering Wiz Fusion was just freezing the lane anyway, I don't know if I completely agree with that decision by Dignitas, but it's one they're going to have to live with. They are still up 2,000 gold, and they have now taken 3 turrets to 1, so maybe their building advantage will have its own benefits.
Well, I mean, you look at Dignitas, and they certainly got the advantage as far as their AD carry is concerned. Already the Bloodthirster completed for Cutie Pie, despite the prior lane freeze by Wiz Fusion, right? The selfish benefit he was going for that you talked about. Dig got more team objectives, and their AD carry still got ahead here. And look at this, the mid lane actually left open as well, and Crumbs is coming around behind. Nintendude, oh, good KO, but that might not be enough. Another, oh my gosh, well played there by Coast. He does survive. Oh, Shifter, no!
Shifter,
scumbag!
He dodged out of reflex, I feel like. You see a giant rocket coming towards you, your first thought isn't to just go into it. Nintendude was unable to dodge it out of reflex, and the home run there from I'm a Cutie Pie.
Nice shot right there. So, Cutie Pie 3-0-1. Only 70 minions, but why get minions when you can kill champions? Zion back to the top lane, almost static Shiv. Sunfire, though, already done for Cruiser. It seems like at level 9 now, of course, his matchup's going to be really about itemization more than anything else.
Yeah, with Sunfire Cape being completed for Cruiser, I feel like Zion Spartan is pretty much just in farm mode. But as far as Yasuo goes, he has escaped the laning phase as well as he can. Scar could not escape the laning phase in the previous game against Bjergsen, and neither could ManCloud, actually. It hasn't been a good day for Yasuo. Zion Spartan is doing better than most, though.
Yeah, he's actually got a slight, at least 4 minion kill lead over his lane opponent. Took a trade right there and chewed through Cruiser's ultimate and stayed more or less alive through it. Burned his Ignite for that, but now they're just equal on combat summoners. Let's see where we go here. So Coast, they've actually rotated themselves back down to the mid lane. I'm a Cutie Pie actually alone in the bottom lane right here, farming up his BT. Wiz Fusion's got his Bloodthirster done as well. So these guys
waiting. They're trying to get the pickoffs right now. They have a few pink wards inside their jungle.
Uh-oh.
Look out. They could really chain some good stuff here.
This is going to be all kinds of painful. Scar gets the kill credit on 1. Nice play from Daydreamin', but I think it's not going to be enough for him. Crumbs picks that one up as well. 2 more for Dignitas, and they're making some nice moves in the mid game.
And Coast has really lost control. They were trying to set up a gank of their own against Amundo, but the patience of Crumbs actually to get the auto attack and the Q before any of his other spells let him maximize his damage. The armor shred on the Wukong Q just allowed his Cyclone to do even more damage there, chained with the stun of Kiwi Kid, who has been roaming a whole bunch this game. Both those things making a pretty big impact.
He's been part of 6 of his team's 7 kills. The only guy who's ahead of him on that one is Crumbs with 7 of 7. So those two have been doing a heck of a lot to make the game happen here. And Cutie Pie, with his support leaving him, completely fine. Never died on a no-escape champion.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's because Coast hasn't been able to make any aggressive plays towards them. The few times they've tried to get up in I'mACutiePie's grill, they've been counterattacked by even more people from Dignitas. I think the early game vulnerability of Dignitas has been easily surpassed here. They did the lane swap at the start of the game, which allowed Skara to shove up the lane and get a slight edge on Shifter. So Skara hasn't been pressed and has always been able to assist with Requiem in these fights.
Yeah.
Additionally, you could see that I'mACutiePie hasn't really needed KiwiKid as a support, and it's allowed KiwiKid to roam around and be a part of 6 of the 7 Dignitas kills. It's really KiwiKid's roaming and Skara's ability to participate with his Requiem that have given them this huge edge.
And speaking of more big edges, and just sort of the other stories in the game, KiwiKid, we talked about how he's been investing his gold. So he picked up Boots of Mobility, got the Distortion enchant for more flashes, and he finally did pick up some gold pretend with the Nomad's Medallion. So he is investing so heavily in a very successful future where Daydream is just like, well, I'm 0-2-0 and not having the best time of this one.
Yep.
Zion Spartan, I think, is the only guy who's, I guess Zion and Shift are the only guys going really untouched in this game. Well, we said it, this Champ 6 sort of unlocked the Coast solo lanes.
Yeah.
They're at least doing well, but I feel like they need more than this.
And there's always that danger when you pick such a low tank team that when you fall behind, no one can think about getting the fight started. Because now that Dignitas is tanked up a little bit, at least in the top lane from Cruiser, when that team fight phase does start, it might be hard for them to actually reach the back line. Against someone like Skara, who, as we talked about in the team composition earlier when Curse actually ran a Karthus, just having a farmed Karthus makes it much more difficult for the squishy people who dive to make things happen.
Watch out, Zion Spartan. The team is coming to try to kill you. Can you do enough damage to Cruiser before you die? Because basically all that's going to happen. Flashes and tries to dash through, but there's so many people to go for. Oh my god, Zion Spartan! Are you serious? Taking one down with him.
Spectacular play there by Zion Spartan. His E on Yasuo, the sweeping blade, does go up in damage the more you use it, and he got a max damage one there.
All right, well, Skara popping the exhaust on Shifter over the top of the slow, and forced to flash as well. So Shifter just burning the ignite, but taking away 2 summoners.
Yeah, and that was with a 2-level disadvantage that Shifter was able to do that to Skara. That was a level 12 versus a 10. That's what I thought we'd actually see more of in the laning phase, but Skara kept his distance so well from Shifter's Kale that he's been able to keep his farm up, 171 to 140.
Yeah, significant farm score just in general for Skara, keeping that 10 per minute thing going on pretty strong. Coast grouped up for Dragon a little bit early, actually. They went down to the area, but it wasn't there, and now Dignitas have made the rotation in time. Zion Spartan's top lane, this is an easy man advantage for Dignitas, and the reveal in 10, dude.
Don't try.
Yeah, don't go for it. Okay. Nice trying the piercing arrow. Not the same Q snipe we saw against TSM, but from Cloud9 earlier. But Coast now trying to hold on.
First Dragon for Dignitas. They got control over that. Because the game is a little bit later now, and Dragon scales based on the average champion level of the game, that was the most valuable Dragon thus far.
Yeah.
Even though Coast had picked up the first 2, and it just extends this Dignitas lead here. They're pretty much, at least, they have different mindsets. KiwiKid and Crumbs are the ones going around looking for all the kills, and they're just enabling Skara and Cruiser the Bruiser to farm so far in the lane, and it's working quite well.
It is, yeah, exactly. They're doing a really good job of all this one. And Tendu kind of taking some farm for himself, but he's actually well behind Crumbs. And Crumbs, by the way, very offensive focus. I don't know if we touched on this yet, but Elder Lizard Brutalizer for the jungle Wukong. That is a damage jungler.
It absolutely is, and he's definitely trying to snowball ahead a little bit in this game, trying to parlay those early advantages. The Lizard Elder will help him clear the jungle much faster, but specifically, just for physical damage champions, it is much better than it used to be. Let's see how fast he can get down Wiz Fusion.
Well, he's been knocked up into the air. The Wall of Pain does land as well. The flash from Wiz Fusion trying to get him out. There's the Lantern. He's going to survive. Nice pickup there. Crumbs forced to run away.
Yeah, he didn't actually get his Wukong Q, the crushing blow, down before he popped his Cyclone, which hurt his damage substantially. He was so worried about Wiz Fusion getting out of range and wouldn't get the knockup for the ultimate that he popped it early. We would have seen the true damage of his damage Wukong if he pulled off his combo properly.
Nice, but it's going to be the red buff, though, still stolen away by Dignitas for their jungle control. And just the fact that they're kind of winning the mid game right here, red buff on Crumbs. Nice and happy. Zion and Cruiser still battling in this top lane. I want to see this continue to move on. It's just a 10 minion kill sort of switch between the two.
Yeah, still a bit of a farm off in that top lane. Zion is hoping to get to a point where he can get his Infinity Edge done and then make some team fight moves. There's not too many things for him to chain off of knockup-wise as far as Yasuo is. Yes, Thresh has a couple of ways of knocking people up, but outside of that, he basically has to do it for himself, which isn't the type of Yasuo synergy we've been seeing other teams go for.
That's true, but I guess it fits the Coast style, though, because they're all about Zion split pushing. That's like their #1 strategy is Zion. What do you want to play this game? Okay, carry us, please. Of course, they've added Shifter, who's an amazingly skilled mid laner as well, so some more threats on the team. But yeah, it's definitely a different style. It's not the like crazy engage comps we've seen from Yasuo's before.
I think one of the reasons that Coast looks so lackluster in this game is, especially during the NACL, they played a very conservative early game and then allowed Shifter to roam and make plays for them in the mid game. That requires their lanes to not lose badly, though. Once they lost control of their own jungle, whenever they would go and try and make a rotation, Kiwi Kid would go and cut them off. And past that, Coast doesn't really have many other game plans. So since Shifter's been shut down, you can see 0, 0, and 0. It just means the team doesn't generate kills because he is the one that generally makes things happen.
Well, that's true, and we'll see if they can do anything with this. Of course, Kayle and heck, Yasuo, both for what that's worth, do scale very nicely into late game.
Extremely nicely.
Yeah, I mean, maybe not Karthus nicely. I feel like that's actually a pretty contentious, like, who's the better late game mage.
Ooh, you know what? There is a blue elixir on Scar right now, right after he completed his death cap. So he is as strong as he is going to get relative to the rest of the game at this moment once he consumes that blue elixir. They're going to try and force around this Baron area, knowing that Shifter's trying to go and farm. This thing would die really fast. Coast cannot take this for granted.
They're not going to get there in time, I don't think. They know about it. They're running across the map, but it's already down to half HP. Look at this thing drop right down. Jinx and Karthus, he's actually going to burn through a bunch of his mana pool, but that's going to go down. Baron Nashor picked up by Team Dignitas. Coast see that, and they're like, oh, crud.
Yeah, that was a... They made a boo-boo. Let's see if they can come back from this one. It just means not only are they down 8,000 gold, they now have to contend with all the gold value from that Baron buff. And Dignitas didn't have to burn any ultimates for that, so they are completely free to dive if they want on this one. The big thing is if Cruiser can get the turret on him, it means they can pull off a successful dive. Let's see if Dig wants to go for it.
Let's see what they do. They're sitting there in front of the minion wave. Next one coming up in about 15 seconds. Coast completely grouped this mid lane. They know exactly what this game is. PewDiePie happy to even tank turret shots, even if it's a backdoor bonus because he has Baron regen. Why not?
Yeah, exactly. So they're completely fine taking this poke, and look at them just retaliating some of it. I wonder if they're just going to try and push this straight up to the inhibitor. At some point, Coast is going to have to try and stop this one. The Coast wave clear is trying as best it can to get through that. They have the Varus and the Kayle. It's not spectacular wave clear, which is why you can see Dig getting some of that damage down. Here it comes.
They pull on a Scar, but Kiwi gets one who engages Zion Spartan, getting the Kayle ulti and intended running away. Can they get the damage out? But Elise falls. Wukong gets traded back on Scara, still has Requiem though. This is not good for Wiz Fujin. One's going to go down. Daydreamin', not in a good spot. Will he get dropped? Nah, yes, PewDiePie taking him out. Shifter, the only man alive. 4-for-1 inhibitor controlled by Dignitas.
The team fight danger of a Jinx with a lot of kills, just chasing down even more from that. It was the best time for Dignitas to push. All the timings worked out just right for them. As soon as Scara got his death cap, they got the Baron. Everything just worked out, and the dive was easy.
Very easy for these guys. Talisman of Ascension also was completed for Kiwi Kid to help push that team in. The Dragon's even up in 10 seconds. You can see the team running over to that side of the map as well. Everything looking great for Dignitas. Now 12-2 with a killed inhibitor, and they're just ready for the Dragon on the respawn. These guys are firing on point right now.
Yeah, an extremely stark difference to what we saw earlier when Dignitas played TSM. Or even when Dignitas played CLG yesterday. They looked lackluster. They didn't really look like they had a purpose. Their lanes were losing. And in this game, they have roamed around so well. They've been very decisive with their initiations, and they've looked like just a completely different team.
Yeah, an absolutely great team right there with champions that seemed pretty comfortable for them. I think, remember, a lot of our bans were focused on the mid lane, so everyone else got to play what they wanted. Dignitas rush picked their bottom lane. Kiwi Kid got to make a lot of plays on Annie because of it, and it was them finding a good early game plan. I think that was a big part. Crumbs and Kiwi Kid looked very comfortable.
The jungle Wukong has worked out quite well. You can see 2 and 9, and 2 and 9 on Kiwi Kid as well. It was kind of a dynamic duo of Annie Wukong. Is he going Volcano Wukong, or is he just the normal boring Wukong? Nah, he's not. He's doing like the Jade Dynasty Wukong.
Yeah, that's actually my favorite Wukong skin.
You don't like the Volcano Wukong?
I mean, it's cool and all, but I usually like the newest one.
Okay.
Just as like a general thing. I'm like an anti-hipster.
I was actually going to just say that. Good work.
You can if you want.
Too late now, freak. All right, so Dignitas actually has 5 people grouped up and ready to go. They miraculously still have some Baron buff left because they were so quick acting on that last Baron. Even when their Baron falls, I feel like they should still feel safe going for another turret dive. Because the distortion boots were bought by Kiwi Kid, he'll actually have his flash initiation up in about 45 seconds. So without Baron, I actually think they could go on the next flash tibbers.
Well, let's see. They've got 2 waves then until that happens. The inhib turret taking some attacks right there. I'm a cutie pie happy to shoot that thing with his rocket launcher. Fishbones is its name. And we'll see what they go for this one. Not javelins, cleavers. They're like javelins, but they hurt more.
No.
Depends on how much
Javelins
AP you
hurt way
have.
more.
Depends on the AP. With Cruiser's build, I would rather have cleavers than javelins.
Well, yeah, if you build Randwinds and Sunfire in Italy.
Just saying. All right. All right, there we go. The siege going to continue. Baron buff no longer here, but the flash
Almost up.
almost up.
Got a couple seconds. Let's see. It's got 5 seconds left. So this initiation, they would want to get Kiwi Kid to drop the Tibbers, and they want it, in the perfect world, get the turret onto Cruiser the Bruiser's Mundo because he's 232 armor, the whole crap load of regen.
Yeah.
Last time it got on Crumbs, and he actually died since he's a very squishy Wukong. But they don't seem like they have any qualms about going in here. They're posturing themselves very aggressively.
Oh, here we go. Cruiser going to go in, and nope, it's actually, I'm a cutie pie pull dagger, but the turret's dead, so here we go. Nintendo dropped dangerously low, and control over the inhibitor is here. Coast haven't even engaged on this one. They gave up the inhibitor just for kind of receiving mean looks about this.
Yeah.
They backed out.
2 out of 3 inhibitors now down for Dignitas. They might want to shop before cycling down for the third, since Skara and Cruiser are a little bit low, but it really just depends on how confident they are feeling as a team right now. They've actually spent a decent amount of their gold. They're sitting on about 4,000 or 5,000, which would still give them about a 10,000 gold lead, which might be why they're still sticking around.
Well, there we go. The minions swept away. They did look for the rotation on the minion wave there. About 25 minions in that pool, but they didn't get it here. Mid lane inhib should be coming back up, and there it is, actually. Dignitas going to stay for this one.
Yeah, well, may as well. If Coast gave up the last one, they might want to give up this one, but they land a Cocoon. There's a fight!
Skara dangerously low. He drops there without getting to do anything there. The fight comes in. Look at the engagements. Fusion trying to for one so far in this fight. Now will Coast push them out of the base? Not before losing their inhibitor.
Pretty good catch by Coast in that fight, but it just clearly wasn't enough. A lot of damage got dumped into that Kayle intervention.
Yeah.
But as a team, Coast just wasn't able to re-engage. Running through the Karthus is something they can't really do. Zion Spartan, especially without an Infinity Edge, can't go in and do any type of meaningful damage onto I'm a Cutie Pie. He'll go in once. I feel like Kiwi Kid will just stun him, and then that Infinity Edge, I'm a Cutie Pie would finish him off. So we can just see the nice combo here. They chained double CCs into Skara and then blew him up from range. And at that point, they wanted to just run away as best as possible, which they did pretty well. They had pretty good disengage because they're pretty much all range champions. It did mean they had to abandon their inhibitor, though.
Yeah, and you talked about sort of Coast being unable to chase them as well. You mentioned that there's no real knock-up synergy here for Zion Spartan. I haven't seen him ult almost at all this game, and certainly not as a re-engage tool here. So.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Zion's been sort of sitting there auto-attacking. Finally finished an Infinity Edge, so that's done for him. But a much less frightening Yasuo from what we've seen in some of the games in the LCS so far.
Yeah, this is definitely not Yasuo's day.
No.
He's 0-2 so far. This Baron is too fast for Coast to even consider trying to stop. I do think Dignitas has played a much better game this time. Surprisingly, like the last 3 games of the day here have been very one-sided.
Yeah.
We had very competitive games, I feel like, in the first day, but here they've been, totally
decisive.
Different. Yeah, incredibly decisive.
Fairly clean.
Yep.
I feel like good decision making. They're not getting too aggressive with dives. Remember, EG actually didn't have anyone die for the last 15 minutes.
Yeah.
I feel like the 3rd kill from CLG was minute 12 or so.
This one, 13-3 as well. It's a surprising champion select to work out for Dignitas because normally teams have been so paranoid about what to do in the early game. and especially Dignitas has had issues falling behind in the early game. If I think back to when Dignitas was a very strong team in North America, which I think was in the start of Season 3, they were doing it with, Xin Zhao and Diana and Kiwi Kid on stuff like Elise in the top lane and Draven from AmacutePie, even Graves, just like these early game champions that would just dominate lanes. And then because Dignitas was so far ahead, they would just kind of push all the lanes and win because they were ahead.
Yeah.
And then when they stopped being able to win the early game, they kind of stopped being a dominant team. They started losing a lot.
Yeah.
Which is weird how they picked the Karthus in the Mundo, but then still win the early game. It was kind of just a miraculous performance by Kiwi Kid to get them through that early game and make plays happen. Because the team comp wasn't actually speaking to an early game domination, but they dominated the early game anyway, and we're seeing the results of that. Here's a fight.
Here we go, the rocket comes across, and there's the knockup on the 2. Zion Spartan just barely getting away, but then still dies. Looks like everyone else forced to run so low on the health bars here. Of course, Scar has already Requiem, but it's enough to get them into the base. 3 members already dead. Sorry, 2 already dead for Coast, and Dignitas just completely in control. They're going to take the win at about 31 minutes in and put themselves on the scoreboard.
Scar giving him the claps that he loves to do after every victory. We haven't seen those claps for a while.
Yeah.
They lost 2 Battle of the Atlantic games, 2 games at the start of the season, and finally they have a dominating victory over Coast. 15 kills to 3. Scar played very well on his trademark Karthus.
Yeah, completely did a great job in his lane. It's weird to say won his lane when he didn't kill anyone, but when you're Karthus and you get 50 minion kills without dying, you won your lane as Karthus right there. Scar putting up a great performance. Everyone else doing a good job, and Kiwi Kid especially I gotta talk about because converted support player from the top lane. Got a lot of flack actually for his top lane play at the end of the season. Having to fill shoes with Patoy, who was one of the best support players we'd seen in North America. And he was a key part of this victory here.
And it's funny because we had the feature early on about Kiwi Kid and AmacutePie and how they kind of tango and dance together. Yet this game was all about Kiwi Kid just not being with AmacutePie. And they both just kind of did their own thing, but it gave them all their roaming advantages.
Yeah, it's like, this is going to be a weird one. Kiwi Kid walking across and asking someone else for the dance. And Crumbs did say yes.
Yeah, he did.
And to be fair, though, for CutiePie, right, even though he was left alone without a dance partner, he danced by himself pretty happily.
I feel like he's the type of guy who
could dance by himself?
Who can dance quite well by himself.
Yeah, I believe it. He could put on a mean headbanging. He's got the great hair for it.
I was hoping he'd do some like classical dancing.
That'd be awesome.
Tango with himself.
Does that even work?
Probably not.
I feel like that's like by definition
Kiwi Kid could do it though. Sorry, I'm a cutie pie.
I believe, yes.
Yeah.
If there's anything that could be done that's not supposed to be done, it's probably I'm a cutie pie. So Dignitas ending the day with a win. EG ending the win with a day as well.
The day with the win.
What? Oh, did I really just do that wrong?
Like twice in a row.
Oh my gosh.
That was really cool.
Ending the day with a win for both those teams, putting themselves back in the standings, of course. A lot of new things sort of coming through here. Right, Cloud9, I think they've played different things every single time. At least sort of different types of comps, I feel like, every single time so far in their 3 wins. XGG looking pretty good. TSM looking pretty good. These guys all started putting some wins together. Coast is kind of like the one team where I'm like, I feel like you guys had higher hopes coming into this one.
Yeah, Coast, definitely a disappointing start to their season. I had them ranked pretty high, and if I was to do power rankings, I thought they'd be maybe even the top half of the LCS so far.
Yeah.
Because they looked so good in the offseason.
Yeah.
Especially against the other challenger teams they were playing against.
Right.
But remember, they did take all 5 games to beat the Walking Dead. And it's kind of a weird stat to call back from because it really does depend on your opponent. But they were very close to not even making it in the LCS. The last team that took 5 games to get in the North American LCS was Velocity, and they had the worst regular season record in LCS history. So I do feel like Coast needs to rebound a little bit.
And Coast, to me, has always been a team that actually started out super weak and then kind of came together at the very end. Now, in the summer split, they didn't. But spring split last year, they were bottom of the table for a long time and then made a run at the playoffs for top 2 at the end of spring split. And took TSM to 5 games when TSM was the best team in North America. And is it like is that what happens in the spring for Coast? Do they just do this and have a really rough start? I don't know. It's a statistic of 1.
Yeah, they need some consistency,
they
first
do.
and foremost, because they've shown they're not a consistent or quality regular season team. If we look at their regular season finishes, they were 6th in the spring split of Season 3 and 7th in the summer split.
Yeah.
And 0-2 so far, so if we think about it, I think that puts them at the bottom of the table after 2 days.
Yeah, it's got to. Pretty rough start for these guys, though. Of course, the other team that we had seen come through from the challenger scene and make it in is Curse, who had been dropped down, played also in the NACL, had a worse record than Coast throughout the NACL. So we thought, okay, Coast is the stronger team here, and Curse have done actually phenomenally so far. They've put up some great results, some really interesting team comps as well, especially ones where they play off of their players' unique champion pools, like the Akali from Voyboy, things like that, and like that's my new team to watch.
Yeah, Curse was actually Riv's pick when we did the predictions for who he thinks is going to be great in the LCS. You know what? It's turned out pretty well. Like you said, the crazy champion picks they have, they did not look that great in the offseason, but that's because they were hiding their stuff for most of it.
Yeah.
And now that they're kind of bringing it out, Voyboy a little bit more time in the mid lane spot, getting more comfortable with everything. Could be working out for him in the long run, but we got a lot of League Legends left to play.
We do have a lot to play, which is always awesome. I'm a fan of having more games to do and more going on. And, of course, later tonight we're going to have more games as well with the Challenger scene going to be putting out some games. So I got to say I'm a big fan of all of the actions going on tonight, so stay tuned for all that. If I heard correctly, I believe we have the analyst desk who's ready to talk about some stuff. I actually misheard because you were talking at the same time.
Understand, yeah.
So, yes, we do have the analyst desk here ready for us here to give us a preview on what's going to be happening there on the Challenger.
Or do we?
Thank you very much, Freak. Indeed, we do have some Challenger Series matches to come up before we throw it back to you guys to end off the LCS part of the day and we start the Challenger Series part. Coming up, as we said, Xiaowei Xiao, the mid laner for LMQ, going up against MashMe on VVV Gaming Red. Two very well-known names, and these guys are going to be putting up some steps in the game in just a few minutes here.
You're right. Our first match is what a lot of people are going to be tuning into for the Challenger Series because LMQ came over from China. They're going to take their shot at the North American scene here. A lot of hype around them. They've beaten plenty of LCS teams in the ranked fives. Some things even like the other Challenger teams stop queuing sometimes when LMQ are in queue for these ranked fives because they're that scary. So everyone's excited to see them play. And then, of course, Don't Mash Me is on VVV Red now. So former LCS player looking to get back into the scene.
Absolutely. It's going to be a super amazing matchup. Next on that, we have the first in ranked fives, Cognitive Forge. These guys are coming out as top seed, and they're going to be playing up against Why So Esports.
So this Cognitive Forge team, they're actually the #1 coming out of the ladder. LMQ, with all their hype, was #2. So the second match actually should be just as good.
Wait, how are we going to consider this, right? Because we know it's Xiaowei Xiao. We'll talk about the first game a little bit. Versus MashMe. We know MashMe is always known for kind of Twitch play, clean up the fight kind of play coming from AD carry. Xiaowei Xiao is known for his just all-over control of the map and what he can do for his team. So is an AD carry going to be able to stop a mid laner, which we've been seeing take control of most of the games in the LCS?
I don't think that Don't Mash Me will be using that Twitch just so the way that the meta has switched, but that's a good
You won't
shout
have too
out
many squishy people.
That's like an insight into his mentality, even as an AD carry. He likes to go in stealth, assassinate people late game. Xiaowei Xiao is a very, very solid mid laner. He's been prominent over in China for a while, and he's a similar style to maybe Old Froggen, I guess. He farms up quite a lot, very good in the CS department, and pretty versatile with that champion pool. Can play some safe things there.
Coming over, it's got to leave an unpredictable, you could even say taste in your mouth when you play a team like that. They're kind of organizing themselves to NA strats now, but they're also bringing over their strats that they have used completely throughout their entire time as being a team. So it's kind of a mind game in that aspect as well. How do you strategize against this team that can flip-flop between two regions?
I'm definitely a huge proponent of all the international teams coming on over. Since we don't have as many tournaments where these teams get to play, happy to have them fly over, play in ours.
All right, we're going to throw it back to the caster's desk with Freak and Chat. They're joined by Crumbs to get a little bit of a breakdown on the last game.
Yes, indeed, we are. Crumbs, welcome to the desk, man, and congrats, by the way, on a very good win right there.
Thanks. That was it looked like an easy win. Like, it really wasn't, because coming into this super week, those first two games, personally, I didn't think that was a really good showing of the team that we can be. And that last one really showed what we've been practicing, the team synergy that we want to have. And that's what we've been working on. And those first two games, some things happened in picks and bans in the actual beginning of the game that really threw us off. And we weren't on top of our game at all. So that's why they were so one-sided. And I think that this first game really allowed us to sink our stride into how we want to play the LCS. So it's really good feeling now to actually get back into it.
So let's start with this game right here that you guys just played. A lot of really interesting stuff coming through. Haven't seen Karthus a lot in the new season. Jungle Wukong, especially going Lizard Brutalizer, a whole bunch of damage.
Yeah.
Like, tell me about this team comp.
All right, well, the first thing is that this team comp is not something that we thought of ourselves. This is something that another team played it against us. And I'm not going to tell you what team it was because I want to keep their secrecy, but they played it against us, and we thought it was a great idea. So we copied it off them, and we tried it against us. And it worked great. You know, with Jinx and Wukong, you push so much faster than the Elise. So you saw they had 4 people down at the bottom turret the first one. With 4 people, they took the turret slower than we had it with 3. And it's just really fast pushing. And then when you have Annie on your team comp, you have such a strong engage. And with Wukong as well, you can follow it up really easily and do very high damage, especially when you go a Spirit Lizard, just all damage out build. And regarding that build was copied from solo queue mains. Like, there's a lot of solo queue guys that play jungle Wukong, and then that seems to be their build. So I was like, you know what? These guys clearly know Wukong better than I do. Okay. It's something that I want to pick up. I'll try it out, and I liked it, so I played with it.
Nice.
Yeah, everyone likes to talk about the 50 to 60 armored MR you can get just from your passive and the masteries on Wukong.
Yeah.
But Kiwi Kid, to me, made a lot of roam plays in that game. Can you talk to me what the communication was like, since he was all over the map, not just babysitting Amacutie Pie?
Okay, so with Kiwi, he has the stun all the time, right? So he's able to defend dives and provide dives easier than anybody else. For me as Wukong, I only have CC when I have my ultimate, which is not nearly as often as an Annie. So we had him go in certain lanes, like say defend with Mundo just to prevent him getting dough. So he was there to prevent dives happening, and then once we got some turrets, we're able to establish a lot of war control in their jungle, and we basically just have the global pressure of Karthus, and with my all damage build and high burst Annie, we're able to just burst down whoever we want at pretty much any time. And that's what we saw when they came to our red side, to their red jungle. We caught their bottom lane, just used all our ultimates and just blew them up right there.
And how do you think Kiwi Kid is actually progressing as a player? He had kind of a rough season in the last split as a top laner, coming in as a support. It's always weird seeing a converted role for a player. How do you think he's actually working with the team?
I think he's working well with the team, actually. And, you know, the reason why people really like this bottom lane is because it has the Kiwi Pie synergy that everyone talks about. They're always streaming and just playing a lot of games together. And they seem to really know each other. And, you know, sometimes they're struggling, but I think their struggle is just mostly regarding the fact that it's new. You know, it's a new role. You can't just hop into it and say, I'm going to play this competitively. It takes time. So as the season progresses, as we practice more and more in a more strict regimen, I think we're going to be able to do a lot more work regarding bottom lane synergy and just all-around plays that you saw with the synergy between, I guess, support, mid lane, and jungle.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds like you guys are definitely looking up a whole bunch, but maybe talk to me a little bit about how Scar is kind of working through his stuff, because he's went back to something like Karthus. No one had played Karthus mid lane in a very long time, but he's had a successful go at it because that's kind of his core champion. Could we expect more of that from Scar, or is he going a different direction?
Absolutely. I think we should expect it from practically us and every team here. As you saw Curse, they pulled out a Kali mid, which is just a throwback to, what, 2 seasons ago, and then Karthus top lane. So this just shows that the current meta is not what it looks to be, which is just, say, Yasuo middle and then super tanks top and then these other supports that just are so conventional. You saw over in Europe, people are playing support Kennen and things like that. It just shows that at the current state, the game is in a really good place for playing whatever you want. You just have to be good at it and know its strengths, and everything's playable, everything's viable, and I absolutely love that about this new patch. So I think it creates a development in how teams think, that they have to worry more about what they want to play instead of thinking, oh, we need to counterpick. It's always, no, this is what we're going to play. They can play whatever they want to play, but this is what we think is good. And that just adds a new dimension to the game, which I absolutely love.
Well, it's good to hear. I like that you guys are trying out new stuff. I'm still a fan of the mid-Pantheon from the end of the summer split last time around.
Yeah, and almost all the teams that have tried new strategies this weekend have won with it. So
yeah, exactly. So we do actually have a replay of one of your guys' mid-game team fights around 22 minutes in, Crumbs. If you want to get us through that, we can get the replay up on your screen. So you guys are 8-1 in the game. Looks like you're siege in the mid lane. Walk us through what goes on here.
All right, so in this team fight, we have Annie with Flash and Wukong with Flash, our 2 engages. We're going to look for a wall just to get somebody. They get the Annie Tibbers on 2 people. Then I go in as Wukong and then try to just get as many people with my ulti as possible. You notice I took tower aggro immediately. So I just knew I'm going to die right here. I already got all that I needed to do with my engage. And we just have the follow-up with the Karthus ulti. Before this, we're saying you don't need to overcommit for a dive. We have Karthus ulti to follow things up. We're struggling with tower pushes. All we need to do is get the tower, get them off, and just focus on the objectives. It's a game that we win by taking objectives, not with kills.
Yeah, and you guys got a 4-for-1 fight off it, even the same. So really awesome, both in the play calling and just sort of the understanding of, okay, here's how we're going to do it. Let's get the fight going on. I like the play calling there.
Thank you.
All right, so so tell me, like, you guys, you mentioned in the beginning of the interview, you guys had a really rough time in your first couple of games. What, like, went wrong there?
Well, you know, the first game we had against CLG, we were trying sort of a new dynamic as a team, right? We're putting myself as a main shot caller, which is basically everything I say goes, and you basically have to follow it up. So I'm being thrown into a relatively new position that I'm working on to just master.
Who had done the shot calling previously?
Previously, it was just everybody. Everybody had a say into what. So you're saying this, and then it used to just cause a lot of chaos, say in team fights or say a dragon, which happened many times at Baron. It'd be so many split calls. One says finish, one says go turn on them, and then it just. That's where the Dignitas throw on Baron happened, just because there was no decisiveness. Now that we have a decisiveness on it, we're able to actually prevent that from happening, and it goes a lot more smooth, I think. And just that first game, I felt like a little bit nervous, to be honest. Okay. I went 0-5, and that game, I watched the replay last night. I basically missed almost every cocoon, and I think that I have a tendency to just overcommit to making something happen. Instead of just letting the game flow as it should be, just take it slowly. And just that first game nerves just really got to me, and I just started going way too aggressive and not really thinking about the consequences of my actions. And I think that snowballed the game, because I don't blame it on my teammates at all for that game, because I felt like if I had played my regular game, they were all winning their lanes very well. And it was just my poor play that caused that defeat. And then the second game, well, flaws in our strategy and draft phase happen, and you know that's going to happen to you. Sure, that's something that we can just. That game was taken less harshly than the first one. Okay. And then the third one, we said, okay, look, this is what we had. We have to do this. This is what we practice. This is what we're going to do, and it worked beautifully. All right, well, Crumbs, thank you very much for your time, and of course, congratulations on your first win. Hopefully, the first of many this season. Now, guys, we've got more coming on, though. We got 5 down, but let's see how the standings are shaping up. Still holding first, we do have Cloud9 with 3 wins.
Yeah, in second place after a solid performance today is actually Voidboy and Curse. Then fan favorite Team Solo Mid sits in third with 2 wins and 1 loss. Then we have a 4-way tie for fourth with CLG, Evil Geniuses, Team Dignitas, and XDG.
And of course, in 8th place, unfortunately, is Team Coast 0 and 2. But be sure to tune in tomorrow. We bring you the rest of the coverage here from this week. Day 3 of Super Week will roll out with 5 more games. And that all kicks off with CLG versus Curse, followed by Dignitas taking on Cloud9.
And after that, Coast will look for a win against Evil Geniuses. And in our 4th game, we have TSM versus Curse, followed by XDG against Coast.
And, of course, all that action kicks off same time as it always is going to, Sunday at 12 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Central European. Now, that does it for the LCS, but remember to check out LOLesports.com for the latest info, team stats, recaps, and videos.
Yeah, and while you're there, you can secure a spot in our live studio audience. Just click on the tickets link, and you get all the details.
So for myself, Jat, and the entire live broadcast crew, teleprompter guy got me. No, I'm just kidding. Let's send it over to Kobe and Riv, though, for the NA Challenger Series.
Thank you very much, Freak. And we are here presenting you the first ever presentation of the Challenger Series here in North America. And we have 2 awesome games coming to you. Myself and Kobe are going to bring you those in just a few minutes. We got a little bit of talking to do. I really like the fact of what we just saw, and I hope, or in the LCS, I should say. And I hope those picks, that variation, leads into Challenger, because we heard Jat and Freak saying you already get some crazy picks here.
I know. The LCS teams are showing a lot of varied strategies. And this game is actually going to be on North America Live server. So we will get to see some techniques that you guys at home can then take to your climb of the ranked ladder after the soft reset. Might be able to get some tips and tricks here.
All right, so tonight Kobe and I are going to be calling up 2 huge play-in matches. Now, these guys are going to be heading on to the quarterfinals if they can make it. Our first one coming up is going to be Zhao. Obviously, you know, in LMQ, they are a huge team coming in here. They're going to be going up against VVV Red, and of course, you cannot forget Cognitive Forge. They are the #1 top-seeded team right now. They're going to be heading off against YSO Esports, and the winners of these matches are going to be jumping straight in to the round of 8. And we got to take a look at that bracket because it has been filled out quite a bit for these teams. In the top of the half of the bracket, it's the Walking Zed. You might remember from the spring promotion tournament, they were able to take Team Coast to 5 games. But that's, you know, Coast now in the LCS. That's pretty good, 5 games. That's going to be a team to be reckoned with. So here in Challenger Series, they'll play the winner of Sunday's Tint Gaming versus Skyline Battle in the first quarterfinal matchup.
The second quarterfinal matchup will actually be decided tonight as the winners of our 2 games will meet up Sunday, January 26th.
The bottom half of the bracket features 2 more spring promotion tournament participants. Determined Gaming will take on the winner of tomorrow's Curse Academy and no big deal matchup. As Jat said before, they're not taken lightly. While Cognitive Gaming will face off against VVV Gaming White. And for those of you still getting up to speed on the Challenger Series, all 8 teams that win their way into the quarterfinals earn cash and Challenger Series points.
And those Challenger Series points are what will determine who gets into the playoffs, with the top 3 teams in the playoffs earning a spot in the summer promotion tournament.
That's right. And as always, for all the information on the Challenger Series, including schedule, stats, splits, and more, much more, remember to head over to lolesports.com.
Just pull down that menu under Leagues and Tournaments and then choose the North American Challenger Series, and you're there.
So now you know what's on the line. Let's get to it. Our first Challenger Series match of the night is going to be LMQ versus VVV Gaming Red. Like we said, there's a trip to the quarterfinals, cash money, and Challenger